Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to a special edition of Ben Shatliff on Monday, as we are just 3 days away from local elections taking place not just here in Bury in Greater Manchester, but across England and Wales. Today I am absolutely delighted to be joined by a candidate from Besses ward and also his agent as well. So a very special welcome to Martyn West and also to his agent.
Hello.
Marcus Ackerley. I'm just going to turn the camera around so that hopefully you're both in view there.
We're sort of both in view.
Right. So first of all,
Yeah.
Martyn, this is the second time that you have stood in Besses ward
It is.
as an independent candidate.
Yep, I stood last year and ran a campaign. I didn't win, but I was pleased with the outcome in that I put 3 political parties behind me. And I think that's quite an achievement. One of those parties isn't standing with a candidate this time. And as I say, I was pleased with what we achieved over a relatively short period of time, and I decided that this year I should stand again and try and capitalise on the progress I made last year.
Right, and if Thursday is successful and you do win, and I know Friday is when the count's going to be, when you will find out, what would you say the priorities are? What would you want to do the most here in Besses ward to try and make that difference?
Well, I think number one is to have a very quick session where residents can come to me and give me their problems. I've picked up a lot of those whilst out campaigning. There appear to be issues with regard to education, particularly special education provision. A number of parents have approached me about that and the fact that their children have been out of school for months. Roads, pavements, street lighting are big issues, and what I want to be looking at there is the efficiency of the works that are carried out, because it seems that work isn't being scheduled very well, and a lot of the money that's being spent is effectively being wasted. So I want to be looking very closely at that. But my ultimate aim is to take the issues of the people of Besses and advance those issues and get resources, funding, whatever it takes to give them a better life, because that's not happened for them for a good few years.
I know when we spoke on Friday, and the first time that we actually met was when I was getting off the tram on Friday evening, and even though, because the tram stop where I get off, which is literally a stone's throw from where I live, also a stone's throw from where Martyn lives, but I'm in one ward and Martyn is in the other. But then I thought, well, this is an opportunity to say to Martyn exactly what are you wanting to do in Besses, etc. But also at the same time I thought, well, get Martyn on and we can have that conversation to showcase as well. And but yeah, I mean, you've mentioned there about pavements and stuff like that, and I know Marcus, you've also said there as well about pavements in Besses, etc. I know for a fact, and I think this is certainly an issue around Whitefield, it's certainly an issue around Prestwich as well, whereas pavements are, well, a disgrace, and that, I'm going to just say that in a just as an ordinary person saying about the fact that pavements are a disgrace. And I did actually ask the question yesterday when I was talking to Steve Wright about if there was a situation where it's instead of actually just keep resurfacing stuff and then redoing the potholes, etc., wouldn't it be nice if someone could say, right, okay, we did the entire thing up, redo them from scratch, and that way then the roads and pavements would be hopefully in a better situation. Because what also annoys me is when you get like workmen that might be, I mean, obviously if there's a water leak or a gas leak, that's an emergency scenario, but you think, right, okay, they're going to be there one day, a few weeks later somebody else is there, and a few months after that, that's coordinated so that things are done.
Well, if I could come in, Ben,
Certainly,
I mean,
of course you can.
down Dalton Avenue, we've had trees that have been here since the avenue was, made or put together with these houses, which probably go back to about the 1930s.
Right, yeah.
I'd say the mid-1930s. I couldn't give you an age of the trees,
Yeah.
anything, but for many, many years we had trees cut down which didn't need to be cut down. We also had stumps left, and they were there for years and years and years. Not only that, it was the roots that were part of those stumps which were lifting up the pavement considerably high and going under people's properties, drives, which of course is then their responsibility. That's the way it's put forward is, well, that should be covered under your home contents insurance, and really it's a council matter. And just down Dalton at the moment, this has been months, it's been fenced off on the odd side of the street. So you have to walk around it where they put the temporary fence up, and that means you have to go into the middle of the road for about a metre. With the electric cars, you can't hear them unless you see them, or I've got nothing against those, but anybody, young children, and especially the elderly. And we did have an incident a few months ago where there was an elderly lady actually got mugged because she was walking on what traditionally would have been her side of the street. Because she had to cross over, an opportunist came down and snatched her bag from the corner of Chester Avenue. Now my question is, had she been on this side of Dalton Avenue, would that opportunist have to have crossed the road? But the point being is here, sorry about telling you that story, but this work has been going on for months and it's not finished. So that's one of the issues we've been trying to tackle, as Martyn said. Maybe there is some work being allocated, but why isn't it getting finished? Where are the teams to clear up?
Because it's like, I know it's like that, not just here, but it's like that kind of, because I've said to you both, when we're like pre-interview, when I do lots of walking, I do walking around here, and then go through the park as well, and then walk over the other parts, and then up Sandgate Road. And it's the same thing there as well, where you kind of walking on the pavement, but you're going like up a hill to make way for the tree. And it's the same on our avenue as well, because it's like, I think when I said to Martyn on Friday evening when we first met about the fact that you can get off the tram at Besses, walk along, but you can't carry the suitcase, wheel it, because there's like a whole variety, a tapestry of various different like work that's been done, not paint work. It's literally because of how it's all been patched up. I'm sure that's something you'd like to try and sort out if you could do, Martyn.
Yes, there's a lot of work that needs doing across the whole of Bury, and it's right that everybody in Bury should get a fair share of the resources to sort that out. But at the moment, it appears that the people who live in Besses aren't even getting a fair share of it, or certainly haven't been getting a fair share of it for a good few years. Things like tree pruning and drain cleaning and road repairs, you can put them off for a short time. Perhaps put them off for 12 months if you haven't got the budget. But the following year, you need to then get on top of them, and perhaps something else has to take a step back. One example of the waste, though, is the resurfacing of Thatchleach Lane was done, and they did a very good job with it, but the drains weren't sorted. So we've had 2 winters of drains blocked, ice on the road. That ice then gets under the resurfacing and starts to break it up, and you get the potholes back very quickly. If the drains had been sorted first and kept clear, then the resurfacing would have had a longer life. And in fact, after much campaigning, I managed to get them to come out and sort the drains on Thatchleach Lane, which they did earlier this week. Things are much better now, but one of those drains is so badly blocked, and they think it's got tarmac or concrete down it, that the road will actually have to be dug up to fix that drain. So if the work had been done in a proper sequence and the drain's fixed first, they then wouldn't have to dig it up, and then you wouldn't have to patch it. the worry I have, and it's come up on some issues on other wards as well, about the quality of the resurfacing.
Right.
Is it really value for money? Are we going to get out of that resurfacing a proper life? It should be 20, 30 years.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
I don't think it will be, sadly. I say, yes, the council say they are short of cash, but I think what they've got could be used more effectively. Yeah? And perhaps getting people in their own communities to do some of the things by reporting matters or sorting things out themselves as groups of volunteers. I spend a lot of time helping people around Besses with little projects and problems they have with their own homes, their own drives, their own access issues, their own security issues. More than happy to do that. And if elected, I would not be averse to going out and helping the workmen sort out some. If they're short of staff, not getting enough staff to go and do the drains, I'll happily go as a second man for a few days. They give me a driver. I'll go and clean the drains. And I'm not, I'm a qualified teacher. If schools are short of teachers, I'll happily go and help them out. I'm not here saying somebody else should do all this. No. I'm more than happy to pitch in myself and get some of these things sorted out.
In one sense, going above and beyond what councillors are doing.
Yeah, it's a case of
persuasion.
Putting you, I think the expression is putting your meat where your mouth is. In other words, it's very well as saying, oh, we should be doing this and we'll do this for you. But as Martyn said, he will, and I'll second it with him if need be.
Because you're his agent. Were you his agent last year as well?
Yes, yeah. I mean, when we first started this, we didn't realise how big the ward of Besses was. I mean, it's not just about what I call the older side of Besses, which is where we are now. And you've got the Metrolink, obviously. You've got Buckingham, Dalton, Thatchleach, Victoria Estate. Yeah. Hillock, as it stands at the moment, nobody is denying there hasn't been any improvements.
Right.
There's been a lot of improvements to Hillock, but this is the older side of Besses, and the roads here are terrible. And even the problem, we were talking to the locals who have the shops and Mesopotamia restaurant and bar. We also seem to have a problem with a lot of speeding traffic down here, regardless of how many sets of lights there are. So there is an awful lot of work to be done. And it's not really about getting this work done overnight, which we can't do. It's about trying to get it together so we can all do it. And as Martyn said, if need be, we'll do it ourselves. Or volunteer anyway.
I'm going to ask you another question directly to you there. If Martyn is successful this time, would you stand yourself in 2024? I have been
thinking about it. I have been thinking. I mean, my background, I have to say this, if this is being recorded, but I was a cynic and a skeptic.
Right.
Oh, they're all the same. Nothing ever gets done. And then suddenly, having met Martyn and worked with him, I realised, I have a voice, and so do other people. And maybe if we all collectively get together, we can improve our own areas. It's not about the national issues, which is what the leaflets at the moment from the main parties are talking about. Yes, we know the state of the nation. We know the cost of living crisis and all that. It affects everybody. But if we can start on a locality, maybe we can spread it out and make it better. And that's where I'm coming in from.
Because, of course, these are local elections, and when I used to stand myself years ago, it used to annoy me when different opposition parties would say it's going on the national issues, using the national issues. And I remember one particular time somebody said, can you make sure that those Westminster MPs are behaving themselves who don't want to cause it an issue at the local elections? And I know for a fact, when I used to be involved in standing locally in local elections, of how a local candidate within a specific party can then be tarnished because of what's happened nationally or various different stuff. So I'm going to ask another question just in relation, I was also just thinking about based on what you've just been saying now and also other parties. Because you're obviously going to stand, because you are an independent, if, and again, I'll use the word if successful again, Would you also work with other parties as well in terms of making sure that the best is being done for the people of Besses?
I
Also-
definitely support initiatives which benefited the people of Besses. I accept that if elected, I'm going to be with 2 existing councillors who have some standing, been councillors for some time, and if proposals are put forward which they support for Besses, then I would also support them. I wouldn't be saying, "Oh no, we're not going to do. I don't agree with that." I would, wherever possible, if it made sense, support them, just as I would support other councillors of any party if they were doing the right thing for their constituents. Yeah, and on that, what I would like to say is I think there's also a lot of goodwill out in the community, that if you organised people who were willing to contribute to the community and provided them with perhaps some basic resources, that they would be more than happy to achieve things and improve their own area. I've been looking over the last 2 years of campaigning at the motorway underpass where the Haweswater aqueduct goes under, which is used by a lot of school children to get to and from school. It was in a disgraceful state last year. It's in not quite as disgraceful state this year. It's really not safe, particularly for them to be using in the winter. There's no lighting. It's waterlogged. There's no proper footpath. There's all sorts of rubbish down there because it's a place which is used, unfortunately, by people to fly tip and dump their rubbish. I have been in contact with the Highways Agency because one of the consequences of widening the motorway on both sides to 5 lanes each way is that the lighting is going to have to be refitted or moved, probably new cabling put in for it. And I put to them the fact that whilst they're doing that and there's an electricity supply nearby, it would be a fairly minimal cost to put some lighting in the underpass. Just a couple of lights each side would make it light enough in the winter for school children to use it safely. And I think I wouldn't have any difficulty, because I've done it in the past with other projects, of getting some of the local people to come down and help and move the rubbish and tidy it up. I'm sure I can get somebody to donate a whole load of gravel to sort out the pathway. We need a skip. I'm sure we could fund that in some way, or ask the council to provide a skip for a weekend to get that clear. I think there's an awful lot that can be done in the community to improve it massively for the benefit of everybody.
Is that what I used to call a motorway tunnel, which is literally
it goes from near Parenthorne School, and it comes out in Haybrook Close.
See, point being is, Ben, that it's 11 to 16-year-olds that are using. I mean, I've used it for many, many years.
Yes, I used it myself years ago.
And I came down, I think it was February, because I know Sinister very well.
Right.
And all the pathways, being a keen walker myself. And I came to the stretch where you get out on the Prestwich Hayes AFC part, where there's a little gate, and that was completely flooded. And I mean flooded with 2 or 3 feet of water easily, either side of the fence. And I thought, I've never seen anything like this in the last 40 odd years that I've been around this area. And although that's not on our patch, unfortunately that underpass, sort of as it starts and goes towards, I think it's Haybrook Close on Hillock, Haybrook Walk, it is a very dangerous area for nobody who knows, because people are clearly using it at night as well.
Right.
And my main concern was the amount of school children using it, 11 to 16-year-olds. They may go through there in 2s, 3s, 5s, whatever, but there is the odd chance it's a young girl
on her own,
or a young boy, and you don't know. I hope it never happens, but you just don't know.
I personally have not been down that area for quite some time, but my late grandma used to live on Winning Close.
Yeah.
Which is obviously, which is on the hill. So I used to go through there, going back to Simister, or I don't know if I may have cycled down there, but it's, I mean, as long as I've been around, it's always been a kind of like derelict kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like you say, if something is done so it's made safer for people, then that will certainly benefit everybody.
Yeah, and I say I am. You know, we've done a lot of door knocking down there and spoken to people, and you know there's a lot of people who want to do something about it and are prepared to commit to do it. It's just a question of getting a group of them together, and you're probably only looking at about half a dozen people plus us, a skip, you know, and some tools, you know, and that could be so much better, so much safer. Particularly if I can get the Highways Agency to put some lighting in, you know, which again will be, as they're going to have to redo the lighting anyway, the additional cost of you know 4 or 5 lights and some cabling in a £300 million project is minimal, you know, and I would say that you know they have an obligation to do it as the Highways Agency to at least make it safe.
I raised an issue going back in 2014 which did cause a big massive stir and got me quite a few nasty comments from
as it does.
And that was in regards to the bridge, which obviously we all know, because of course now something has been done where they put railings up there and everything else, because of course it wasn't just occasionally, it was happening on a frequent, I'll say, rather than regular basis, where the police were having to be there because people were threatening to jump off and various different stuff. And I did ask the question, what are our councillors doing? Now, I didn't actually mention any specific names, I just said, but then they automatically thought, oh, this is an attack on us, all this kind of stuff. But the fact is, though, eventually, it wasn't just through me saying something, somebody else who I know quite well led a campaign to get something done. But I know also the Sandgate Road Bridge as well, where I've not heard of anything there, and I hope this isn't going to tempt them to do anything, but still, it's something, like you say there, with the highways, the council, just to make things safer for people, also people just generally walking across, because we've had some bad winds and the extremes of
I mean, the fencing on this side of that
I was about to say
bridge is pretty poor. It's not where the pub is, it's not too bad, but on the side that drops down very steeply to the back of
it's Derwent, isn't it? Derwent
back of Derwent Avenue and down to the allotments. It's a very steep drop, and the fencing the fencing is virtually non-existent. It's just rotted away. Now I think that is Highways Agency land. So they have an obligation to at least maintain it or make sure it's secure. They're probably not bothered because they know that they're going to have to do some work in the motorway widening. So that's probably why it's been left, and it will probably get fixed as part of that. But it wouldn't be too difficult for someone to stumble and have a very nasty fall down that fencing. But nobody seems to be putting pressure on to get it sorted out.
I think it's a 50 or... I don't know, I mean, I'm only estimating here, so please don't get back to me on scientific knowledge, but it seems to be about a 50 or 60 foot drop down to the back of the gardens of Derwent, and where Martyn's just mentioned
I know exactly
about Eden, I can't remember its exact name now, it's the allotments. Is it Eden allotment?
Eden Gardens.
Eden Gardens, that's it. And I took some photographs on Saturday, some last Saturday, which unfortunately didn't come out that well, because I went up to where there's no fence at all, and it gives you the impression it's a straightforward path. On the picture it's not, it's a sheer drop.
Right.
And I was watching young parents with their toddlers running free, well not literally running, but walking up that pavement, and I'm thinking, no, I hope this doesn't happen. But it didn't, but I could have seen if the little lad had just made one false turn, he would have gone straight down.
That fencing, because I used to walk that way from where I lived, going to St Michael's Church. Now I go this way, for like extra steps, that kind of stuff. But then again, I do come that way, coming back. Like you say, on the side next to where the frigate is not too bad. No. But that, I'm sure that blew down not that long ago, or was it the other side again?
I know the other side is virtually non-existent.
Very,
yeah.
And it is a long drop.
There was talk some years ago, and I'm going back to the early 2000s, before
Right.
they put the masts up at the back of the frigates,
Right.
of putting a proper pathway for the public
Right.
up the side of that to
Right.
the beginning of the bridge at Sandgate, but
Right,
it never
okay.
transpired because obviously then they had to put those masts up and that land had to be sectioned off. But
Right.
for many, many years, people were, and still do, use that bottom grass slope
Right.
as a shortcut. And it's the same as Martyn and I have been talking the last 2 weeks. If you think of the amount of traffic there is on Oak Lane and Thatchleach Lane, you have all those grassy verges on that side of Hillock where people are parking their cars because they've got no off-street parking.
Yeah.
So why don't they just take some of those verges away, let people park in there,
Yeah.
and you don't have the you won't change the volume of traffic, but you may change the speed of it. And when people are coming in to pass, especially if there's a double-decker bus, you don't have to slam your brakes on, which
No.
I have to say has nearly happened a couple of times last week, hasn't it? But
And it's the same also, again, this is going into Holyrood Ward, but of course it's neighbouring wards, and it's the same, it can be similar issues across different areas of Prestwich and Whitefield, and possibly across other parts of Bury and Greater Manchester. But I know Pannonford, because somebody mentioned to me years ago about the grass verges there, and it's still, really, they should just either surface over, or they should look at removing them.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some mileage also in where property developers come in and build on small patches of land, as they have on Derwent Avenue. There's some mileage in getting them to do some of the local infrastructure type repairs, like making good the roads, making good the pavements, because they're likely to need to actually use those themselves, and the people moving into the houses they're building are likely to want nice pavements and nice roads outside. So including that in part of the planning approval at what would be, in the overall scheme of things, fairly minimal cost to the builder, would be something which would help to improve the area, if only the immediate area of new building, but it's an improvement, and it's at no cost to the council. But,
Something else I wanted to ask you about as well, which obviously this is something that is big across the borough. It's certainly a big issue in Prestwich, well, I know for a fact it's a big issue in Radcliffe as well, and that's the regeneration of the so-called Whitefield Town Centre. Now, I know, I can see you laughing there, Marcus, I know that I know in terms of, and I might sound controversial here, so I'm going to apologise in advance, but I know there's not as much of a kind of thought of like as a town centre in Whitefield as what there is in Prestwich, Bury, I suppose Undruff as well. It's Undruff Poland, I suppose, like a town centre kind of thing. But things are being considered, aren't they, and being thought of. What's your views in relation to that, Martyn?
Well, Whitefield itself has had its own sort of little regeneration, because there are a number of restaurants and bars that have sprung up without, it seems, anything being driven by the council. Most of the shop's units are in use. There are not significant empty shop units. Had there been significant empty shop units, yes, I think that's where there needs to be sort of council involvement to try and get those back in use. And most of the retail units that are used appear to be shops or hairdressers or beauty places, barbers, people who are businesses that are serving the area. So I don't see the regeneration of Whitefield High Street, I think it's called, as being particularly critical, especially as most of the people in Besses are probably more dependent on the shops the shops at Unsworth Pole, and the shops on Mersey Drive. Right. And there is a lack of retail within the Hillock estate itself. Most people would have quite a journey to get to the shops.
Yeah, especially
Particularly if pretty difficult if they were elderly or had mobility issues.
especially further back. Sorry, Martyn.
Yeah.
Sorry, further back. I mean, you think about how big Roach Crescent is, and like Martyn was saying, it's the population of, say, elderly or perhaps, you know, parents, single parents, whatever, perhaps the unemployed or even people with disabilities, with all due respect, and there is nothing down there for at least a mile.
Right.
They would have to, yes, there's plenty of walkways and shortcuts if you want to call them that, but I've not actually timed myself walking through that area, and Roach Crescent at the very back is quite remote.
Right.
Populated but remote.
Which is not good, and like you say, when there is a huge population of elderly people in this within this area.
Yes, I mean it's I can't see a massive benefit of redeveloping Whitefield High Street for the people of Besses.
Yeah.
I think what the people of Besses need in terms of retail is probably more retail within Besses that's within walking distance.
If I could come in here as well, one of our early, it wasn't a target as such, but it was just an observation of Victoria Square, which I would have presumed as a young child would have been in Whitefield. No, it's in Besses. That's by the Beehive pub.
Right.
In my day when I was a lot younger, because I've been here since 1972.
Right.
In the 70s and 80s, Victoria Square was a hub of activity.
Right.
You had a greengrocers, you had a fishmongers and a butchers, you had a toffee shop for children, a newsagents. Yes, they've got the Victoria Centre, and I'm sure that is a very, very helpful centre to the people who need that, but it always seems to be empty. On the other side of Victoria Square, you have a chip shop, which I believe is never open. Right. You have the old McDine's gambling bookies. That's shut down. It looks a mess. There is a laundrette there, which I believe has been there since time began. Right. But I think it's only open to about 4 o'clock. And it really does need, as Martyn said, we need a few more retail outlets. You know, that's butchers, bakers, whatever. Let's get back to that, because it used to be a meeting point of all the mothers, not off Victoria, but that area. Yeah. And there was quite a community spirit.
Yeah.
To that area.
I know the barber shop is still there, because I walked past that going to St Bernadette's over Easter, but I've been there myself in the past, going back. I think you and I, this about possibly going off what you said there, 72, there's 3 years difference between the two of us, but but yeah, I always think as well, I like to think to myself at 47 as being young enough but also old enough to remember people used to respect each other more.
Everybody said hello.
Exactly.
You know, you talk for about 3 or 4 minutes. The kids had a little, they were like ladders, but it was a sort of play area. I remember it was probably some Art Deco design, but we always used to climb up them while our mothers were talking to somebody else's mother. But there's none of that now. Yeah. It feels dead. To be honest with you,
I must say that on a Sunday morning when I walk through that park going to St Michael's, as I've been doing for the last few weeks, people do stop and say hello, which is very, very nice. Not always other days during the week, sometimes they do, but it's just nice. But Martyn, sorry, you were going to say something else.
I was going to say, I mean, the problem is one of the consequences of having essentially 3, and you might say with Asda at Pillsworth, 4 supermarkets in close proximity, that if people use those supermarkets, then that will take business away from the small retailers, and that's probably why Victoria Square has suffered that demise. It might be why there isn't a massive need for retail on Hillock, and that the shops at on Mersey Drive, are adequate to supply people's needs. But I really don't see much mileage in doing much with Whitefield High Street, as it's called. It seems to be functioning okay at the moment.
They got rid of Elm Square around about 2009 or 1999, and that originally in Whitefield was, again, it was quite a hub for the people in that immediate area.
School uniforms as well.
School uniform, there was I think there was a little supermarket called Lennon's, if I remember rightly. There was a couple of decent cafes. But I came past it one. I thought, what's happened? Because the whole place looks as though the proverbial bomb had hit it.
Yeah.
I know, I'm going back to 2000 or 1999, and I remember saying to somebody, because somebody came into a place I used to work called the Brand Centre, which is now Morrison's.
Yes, I remember. In fact, I remember going to the Brand Centre and it was gone.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's another long story, which probably isn't relevant to this, but yeah, they came in with a petition, and I wrote down, it's taken the white out of Whitefield, which it had, because it was a lovely little square, Elm Square at one point, just near the fire station as you're going down. But as Martyn says, there has been enough improvement in Whitefield. I mean, you've got the Morrisons, you've got all the banks that have now turned into restaurants, you've got some decent bars, it's fairly clean and tidy. Whitefield Park has improved, it's a lot safer now. We've got Metrolink, we've got, it's quite open. For years and years it was quite closed, and there was all these stories about, no, don't go into Whitefield Park, it's dangerous, and things like that. So, yeah, it's improved.
I mean, when you just mentioned there about supermarkets and stuff, I mean, I remember going back in 2009, 2010 when they were building the Tesco Express on the corner of Berryhill Road and Hayward Road. And I thought, right, okay, you've got a wonderful shop next to that, which was quite our shop at one stage. It's had different names. Brilliantly run, really nice, friendly people. And even ask about if you've not seen you for a while, etc. I thought there was no need for a Tesco Express there. I thought at the other end, near where I live, I wouldn't have an issue as much because you're not taking anything away.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was more convenient then for people to be able to get to and from. And again, that offshot, I'm giving directions here, I don't know if I had a camera, but that offshot of people that might need that extra help for retail at this end that haven't necessarily, I mean, I know there are some shops, but that might just need it probably would have been more beneficial if it was either there or...
Well, next to that, haven't you got Zed's convenience store?
Yeah, exactly.
He's been there for years, and if those are the people you're referring to, I totally agree. They are really nice people in that store. Always ask about you if they've not seen you, laugh and a joke. And I did wonder when he told me some years ago they were putting it in. I said, why?
Yeah, exactly. When it's all there, you don't need to go.
I said, there's only one down the road, isn't there? There's a major Tesco down the road.
Exactly.
I mean, one of the problems in most areas is that the small retailers get squeezed out because the big nationals come in, but big nationals don't really give you the choice that a local retailer can give you. A local specialist shop can give you. So the risk in redeveloping the high street in Whitefield is that you squeeze out local businesses, and you find that big nationals start to come in and take over those units, and suddenly you've got another Tesco Express, another similar sort of outfit 2 doors down, a hairdresser's in between something, and the variety and choice that people had has suddenly gone, and there's no real benefit to them.
No. Or if it was coffee shops, it'd be Starbucks all over the place.
Exactly, yes. Whereas at the moment, there are no national retailers down there. There's a little cafe. There's a big sort of DIY hardware shop, which is, I think, it's only been there about 18 months, 2 years, but seems to be holding its own. It's providing what people need. It's perhaps avoiding them making a journey to a B&Q or Wickes or something, because they can pick it up there. And there are some nice bars and restaurants that have appeared. Why should that be changed? I think so. And the other issue, of course, is if you do start putting other businesses in there, what's going to happen about the cars and the parking, because it's already very difficult down there, and it's a busy road, particularly in peak hour traffic. So where's the car parking going to be? Because there isn't really space for any.
And of course, another big issue, which kind of like borders in one sense with Besses, is they're building on greenbelt land. So I'll just check something on this as well, just to make sure it's everything's still recording okay without a problem there. But no, I mean there is a big issue regarding greenbelt land, which is being talked about not just in Bury, but obviously definitely affects Holyrood. It will affect parts of Besses, won't it?
My understanding was that the original proposals might have done,
Right.
but that the proposals in respect of Besses Ward were no longer proceeding.
Right.
The only development that I'm aware of are 3 houses being built on Victoria Avenue.
Right.
I think there was an old co-op, a very old co-op.
It was the old spiritualist
church. That site's been cleared, and it looks as if they're probably 3/4 of the way through the build for 3 houses there.
Right.
And the old Wheatfield site, which is a brownfield site,
Right.
because it had, I think it was a sort of daycare centre for the elderly at one time, and that's surrounded by other housing, so it does make sense. The far end of Besses Ward, up into the corner of the motorway, is predominantly, well, I describe it as agricultural, but I think it's mainly horses.
You mean Mold Hill and sort of?
Yes. There's like the Bos Park
It's a
outside of it.
beautiful park to walk
There's
through.
the Unsworth Cricket Club off Pole Lane. There are a couple of cottages which I think were probably part of a farm at one time,
Yes.
and then there's a very hard to get to farm, which is on a road which used to run through to Simister but got severed by the motorway.
Right.
And they seem to, I don't know whether they breed horses, but they seem to be centred around horses and livery stables. So that's the greenfield land, and I don't think there are any proposals in respect of that other than the motorway junction flyover. And most of that actually will end up on the other side of the M66, taking land from the golf club.
Right. And of course they moved from their original location about guess on for 30 years, or maybe not as long as that.
Hard to believe.
Yeah. Because my dad at one stage used to play golf. We used to play at the old Pipefold, and then of course the new one, which again is a farmhouse, isn't it? Where the actual clubhouse is. Yeah. But what you're saying there in regards to Mohill Lane, when I mentioned about my late grandma living on Wenning Close, the view was beautiful.
Oh, it was.
You could see the fields. It was absolutely wonderful.
What struck me as I've been round leafleting and talking to people is when you get, particularly on the upper level of the Masonette blocks, what a great view you get from there. Right over to in some cases the Pennines or up over Bolton. There's some great views. You think actually, these masonettes and flats and the houses of Hillock, are actually really nice. I have to say that I think the Manchester City planners and architects did a pretty good job when they were planning that and laying it out. They might have done some things better. They obviously didn't anticipate so many cars.
No.
But actually, in terms of laying it out and the range of houses and things, it must have been absolutely beautiful when people first started moving in. It must have been such a change for them from the houses in East Manchester from which most of them moved.
Because of course not many people will know that a lot of that was built, like you just mentioned there, in relation to when there was what they used to call these slum clearances in Manchester.
Yeah.
That's how my dad ended up. He suggested to my grandma and granddad, let's go there, because he was aware of Simister, and he said it looks very nice. And I mean, the housing. So who actually is the association?
They're called Onward, I believe. They had several changes of name, and I always remember it's being part of the council or whatever, which is no disrespect to Hillock or its residents. And then I think about 20 odd years ago they moved to 6-town housing.
Right.
But speaking to some of the residents as we have done the last 2 weeks or so, it's now called Onward.
Right, because I'm pretty sure, and I could be wrong, you will probably know more in relation to this, but I'm pretty sure at one stage my grandma was still paying rates to Manchester.
Yeah, when it was originally built, all the properties were owned by Manchester City Council,
That's what I was thinking.
and people would pay their rent and rates in one. The bins would be emptied by Manchester City Council.
Right.
The roads would be maintained by Manchester City Council. The schools would be provided by Manchester City Council, and funnily enough, there are still some signs up. Quite a few actually. They're probably the one thing that's lasted the longest, other than the buildings. And they say City of Manchester, no ball games by order. And so it was basically a piece of Manchester transposed and dropped into Whitefield, in land which presumably at the time they knew was not likely to be needed for the motorways.
Right.
But, and it was, I think there was a bit of a battle over Manchester giving up those properties and handing them over to Bury in the 1970s, because after it would originally they would be within the boundaries of the Whitefield Urban District Council, and there's still a sign for Whitefield Urban District Council on Barrymore Avenue.
Right.
Conservative order on that one.
Yeah, I think so. But so they would have been within that Urban District Council, but run by Manchester. And then, of course, Bury was effectively expanded in 1974 to take in the wider authorities, and including Whitefield, Prestwich, and most of Ramsbottom. And therefore, I suppose it made sense for Bury to take over that housing. Not sure what happened about the financing for it, but ultimately Manchester did hand it over.
Right. Just also going ahead, looking ahead to Thursday, because obviously, we've all been around for some time and understand of how politics goes across our wonderful borough at Bury. I will give a prediction on Thursday evening as to how I think all this is going to go. But what's your thoughts as to how the rest of the Bury could actually go on Thursday? Have you got any thoughts?
It's probably tainted by my wishes. I'd like to see Radcliffe first gain that final seat in Radcliffe North and Ainsworth. I think the Conservatives vote will suffer, because they are definitely not flavour of the month for the public.
No.
Whether Labour's will rise, I don't know. The issue that I think Labour have, and the thing that's perhaps holding them back, is this clean air zone issue. I think there are a lot of people who are saying, we like the idea of the clean air zone, but why should it cost me to go to work and do my job? I'm already struggling. I do an ordinary job. I've got a van that comes with that job. Why should it cost me £10 a day to drive from Derwent Avenue to the motorway and back? Why are these people polluting us on the motorway?
Exactly.
Not paying as well.
Yeah.
I can see that, and I think that's Labour's Achilles heel, really. And the answer to it is there was never a requirement for there to be a charge for the clean air zone, and in my view there shouldn't be. The idea of the clean air zone is great. Yes, I would agree with reducing pollution. I think anybody would, but not at the expense of local, normal working people. And a scheme such as you can have a replacement vehicle, like a scrappage type scheme, or VAT free, something like that, would be a more sensible move if you want to reduce pollution, and also deal with the motorway issue. That to me is the inconsistency. Somebody from the other end of the country can pollute Hillock and
Besses in
Holyrood,
general.
Besses,
Yeah,
Holyrood
yeah,
and Holyrood as much as they
any of
like,
the stretch.
with some old,
Mm.
clapped out truck driving up and down the M62, but the guy who just uses it to get, just needs it to get to work, there and back.
Yeah.
It costs him money. So I think, yes, clean air zone, but not a clean air zone which costs working people, money directly in that way.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be Achilles' heel. Yes, I hope to win. If I don't win, I'll be back next year, unless Besses gets a fair share. If Besses gets a fair share next year, then I might not be back, but I suspect I probably will be.
Thank you very much indeed. Anything else you wanted to add at all, Marcus, as the agent?
It's been a great pleasure working with Martyn, and it's brought to me home things that we take. When you're living your everyday life, you don't notice the state of things until it's pointed out to you. And like I said, it's not about the national issues; it's about the local issues. It's about what you want in your councillors or the people you are paying your council tax to do for you. And if nobody gets out and votes, unfortunately things are going to stay the same. So, don't waste your time like I used to do, thinking, well, it's never going to happen and they're all the same and all of this and all of that. So please just think about it carefully. And although on the ballot paper you may have the main parties first, consider others, because it is time that we move forward and made a change.
Yeah.
And thank you ever so much for everybody who's talked to us.
Yeah.
Besses.
Yes, thanks very much to everyone. Thanks very much. My name's bottom of the list on the ballot paper. It's easy. Yeah. Just the box at the bottom with a cross.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Didn't they always used to say at one stage, save the best till last?
Yes.
Well, that's the logo.
Save the
Besses,
Besses till last.
Yeah, yeah.
At least you've not got a scenario like I had back in 2008, and someone made said to try to make me feel better about the scenario. There was only 3 candidates, and I was last, and a bit of third, but obviously last. And they said, well, at least you came third. Somebody said to me. I said, yeah. I said, but there was only 3 of us in the race.
Yeah,
They said,
yeah.
but you were third. I thought you're not going to make me sound any better about the situation. But Martyn and Marcus, obviously, thank you both very, very much indeed for taking the time on this bank holiday Monday to obviously come and speak. Invite me into the house, which is fantastic. Please come on again at some stage, whatever the situation, to obviously discuss various different stuff. Don't forget, elections taking place this Thursday, May the 4th, which is also Star Wars Day as well. 7 a.m. up until 10 p.m. Photo ID is also needed as well. It's not just here in Bury, it's across England and Wales. So whoever it is you're going to vote for, then you've got your right to be able to make that difference, or whatever it is that you do want to do. I will be back on Thursday evening live on YouTube, which will also be fed through onto social media, giving my prediction as to how I think it's going to go, and I'll also provide updates throughout Friday as well. So please join me on Thursday evening, and wishing everybody who's standing, whichever party, all the very best. And I can say on this, I do know what it's like to be a candidate. My dad knows what it's like to be an agent as well. Big adrenaline times, that excitement and everything else as well, but also make sure you get a bit of time to have a bit of a chilled out stage, especially after it's whatever the scenario, because you're on that high. And but thank you very much indeed for tuning in. I'm back every Sunday as well with Ben Shatliff on Sunday. Take care and enjoy the day.